Hey guys, it's Nina Means. I'm the director for Austin Community College Fashion Incubator. And I wanted to get a chance to speak with you today about what we had gone over in our ACCFI Presents last week. I know that typically during Coffee Talk, we like to try to catch up on, what's kind of happening in the news, as well as, what's happening in our industry. But I really found that our talk last week with Ann Kasper was particularly enlivening, but it was also something that I think is a really great way for brands to kind of reconsider, where they are during this time. Something, with everything that's happening with the pandemic and all of the things that are happening in our social culture, our political culture, all of those things are huge. And so I know that what we're seeing is a huge shift in what's going on. And one of the things that that Ann was talking about, she's a brand strategist. She's also an advisory board member here at the Fashion Incubator. And one of the things that I found particularly helpful was just how she was talking through, just how we're pivoting, pivoting in our business, pivoting in our personal lives, and how that's helping us to become more effective in what it is that we do. One of the key things that, really kind of hones in on some things that are really hitting home for me personally is really just aligning with your purpose, knowing why you're here and what you're doing, how you're bringing value, not just to your customer, but to yourself and to your coworkers, to your colleagues, to your business network. What's your purpose in that space? And sometimes that takes a bit of a still, quiet time for us to be able to consider what that may look like. It may take some reflection in front of other people, whether it's a mentor or business coach or a friend. But I wanted to go over some of these different areas that I thought were particularly salient from her talk last week. She and I have known each other for a few years now, and she's been an incredible resource for me in terms of business and support, advising on the Fashion Incubator, and just a great friend all around. So without any further ado, let's kind of jump into some of those top points. We may actually get a chance to highlight them a bit more, kind of going forward. But I think that these are really good. So I'm actually going to pull up my notes here just so I've got them close by, because I definitely took notes on what Ann was sharing. I thought that she did a really, really good job. It was really exciting work that was being done there. So sorry if you can hear my phone buzzing in the background. Let me turn this down so you can't hear it. So what I wanted to talk about was, really looking at how brands are staying, we're moving, right, in this time and space with the pandemic and, all of our social movements that are happening right now. But we also have a responsibility to stay true to our core message. I've seen brands do this time and time again where, you see things that are going on around you and you kind of want to run to catch all of the things that are happening, regardless of whether it matches your brand identity or not. Now, there's some things that are just moral, right things to be a part of, right? That we want to make sure that our brand is standing on the right side of history for. And there's definitely, on some level, you're going to have to kind of call what side you're on. But I think that one of the things that I wanted to kind of impress from this is really just knowing what your purpose is in this space and how you're speaking to that, where you show up, how you show up. And so what I wanted to go through is just a few different areas that Ann really leaned into. I wanted to make sure that I stay consistent in the way that I'm delivering this as well, because it's so easy to kind of jump from idea to idea. But what we really wanted to lean into here is just really understanding that even in all of this going on, we don't want you to ever lose your voice. Never lose your voice as a brand, and never stop communicating with your consumer. That's something that has been really, really difficult. And so it's like, okay, Nina, how is that pivoting? It's like, well, during a time like this, sometimes you're not really sure what to do or what to say, but that you're still engaging and saying, hey, we're figuring this out. Hey, we're on our way. Hey, we're trying to, be here for you in the way that you need us to be. All of those things are ways that you're constantly keeping your voice active in this space. In terms of shifting, though, in terms of shifting your, activities or operations or opportunities, really, this is really where Anne said, nothing is sacred except for the voice that you started. So I wanted to tell you a little bit of a story of a brand that I worked with back in, it was several years. It's been some time now. But this brand, in a very different time, mind you. But this brand, saw a lot of things happening in our business, trends that were going on, social movements that were happening, and they wanted to take part of it. But the way that they did it lost their brand identity. And so this is really where brands, as you're pivoting, as you're shifting, as you're responding to what's around you, that you still have to do it in a voice that's authentic to you and a voice that's authentic to your customer. A lot of times we imagine that we are, able to kind of just shift and pivot just because we're a small business. And in truth, we can do that much faster than a larger entity. But where we have to be careful, as small businesses, is to make sure to not overcorrect, right? Whenever you overcorrect, you can kind of steer out of control. But when you're able to move quickly and agilely in moments like this where things are changing so rapidly, it really does give you a huge advantage. And that's really what I think Anne was trying to get across, is that, in these moments of pivoting, in these moments of shifting under these circumstances, small businesses really have a unique opportunity to do so really quickly. But in doing so, the voice that you've created, has to remain consistent, and it has to be as you would continue to speak to your customer, as you would continue to speak to your purpose. So one of the things that Anne recommended really to help us to stay in purpose is to really identify mentors. Mentorship is something that's so important, whether it's an unofficial board that you've assigned to your business, whether it's, a third party consultant that you've hired to support you as you're growing and, making recommendations if it's your first hire. All of these people are those who are really good sounding boards to be able to create meaningful pivots that are still authentic to who you are as a brand. This is really, something that she advocates for, something that she does for other brands all the time. I know that I've used her as a resource myself, and it's been such an incredible opportunity to have someone to look outside of me, not through my own lens, not through what I see, and to be able to speak really clearly into, hey, here's the landscape from my perspective. And those mentors can really give you an objective view to how you could potentially move forward. Sometimes these are people who will work with you at low cost. Sometimes they are quite pricey. And so sometimes you have to kind of navigate, what you really need at the time. Some people will bring someone on as a mentor kind of in a full-time capacity. Others will just do it as a consulting. So maybe it's just an hour or two that you invest in your business, you invest in yourself to say, hey, let's take a step back. Let's look at our operations. Let's look at our brand voice. Let's look at our marketing. Let's look at the product. Let's look at the product again and again, and make sure that we're really speaking clearly during this time, and that we're really putting out the right message, that we're really, putting the right product out there during this moment. And I think mentorship and business coaching really serve to really help businesses continue to move forward in times that are challenging like this. I remember we were talking with Stephanie from SB Apparel, and she was talking about how they were able to bring on their most recent hire, their chief operating officer. And his background is, incredible, but, having steered through challenging waters before, a lot of times fresh eyes, regardless of where they're, I won't say regardless of where they're coming from, but I would say fresh eyes on your situation, fresh eyes on your business, fresh eyes, even in your personal, can really make a huge difference in the way that you characterize the challenges that lay before you, your business, your staff, your contractors, and how you can navigate that more effectively. So, consider, looking into a mentor. Now, some people will say, well, how am I supposed to choose a mentor? How am I supposed to utilize that piece of advice to be able to pivot my business effectively? So, a lot of times whenever I'm looking for mentors, I'm looking for people that are, available for this kind of work is, I'm looking for people whose businesses that I respect. So they may be unofficial mentors, people that in your network. I'm looking for, maybe I go through my LinkedIn network and I look at who do I know or who knows people who know people that I could really connect with that could help support, what I need in order to grow. But I think even before I'm able to start selecting someone who's going to be able to support me, I really need to know what my strengths and weaknesses are. And that's something that Ann, brought out during our talk about, pivoting. I think in these moments, our strengths and weaknesses really show up. I believe that during this time, you've probably seen things within yourself that maybe you weren't expecting to see, or maybe that these challenging times have exposed in a good way. This is the way that we grow, right? We go through challenges, we get an opportunity to do something new, or we, flex a new muscle, or we find out which muscles are actually not as strong as we thought they were. And then we're able to, we have to adjust, for us to continue to move forward and to thrive, we have to adjust. And so what I like to do is, for me personally, is, to kind of take a step back and say, okay, what is on my plate? Like what's on my list, what's working, what's not working. And a lot of times, even in my task list, what's falling through the cracks versus what is thriving kind of may have some indication as to where my strengths and weaknesses may lie. So there are different ways for us to start to find out where our strengths and weaknesses are objectively, that help us to kind of determine what our next steps need to be in terms of finding someone to support or complement what it is that we're not particularly good at. If you are a very creative thinker, very much out of the box, things like this, you may not be as strong administratively. And so you may find that the things that are in your to-do list, the things that are thriving may be, programmatic in nature, whereas other things may be, we've got some number issues that we still need to sort out. And so, you may need someone who's going to be highly technical, in a very different way than what you are. And so these are things that you'll want to look at and say, okay, I think that objectively, I need to be able to see where am I thriving and where am I struggling, and to be able to address that through, your personnel. Maybe you need to look at who in your personnel, if you're bringing people into the fold, or if you're asking people to come on as contractors, or, or this mentorship, capacity, making sure that the person that you're requesting support from is strong in the areas where you're not. And, this takes a level of vulnerability that a lot of times business owners, may not feel as comfortable with, because we think that, hey, I'm supposed to be good at everything. I'm supposed to be excellent at everything. But if we aren't as decisive about what it is, where our strengths lie, we'll find that we're spinning our wheels and not moving forward. And so this is something where we really get a chance to utilize resources that are in our toolkit, as well as getting to know other people who have skill sets that are stronger than ours to help us to move to the next level. So this really takes a great deal of self-awareness. It's not a bad thing to say that you have weaknesses. It's actually, I believe it's a sign of maturity, to be able to identify those things, and then to be able to find others who can help support you in the areas that you're not as strong. What you'll find is that where people are stronger, things tend to move faster and more effectively than if you were to try to take them on and kind of belabored your weaknesses. So these are things that during a time like this, pivoting requires speed, right? And that's one of the reasons why being a small business at this time is so key, because you can move quickly. Now, you can't move quickly if you're belaboring your weaknesses, right? So you're going to need some help, or you're going to kind of need to identify some support that can help you get to the next space. I feel like these times go by so quickly. We're already halfway through. I've got 2 more points. So the next area that I really wanted to focus on, from Ann's talk was, really like diversity and inclusion in this space in terms of pivoting. I think that a lot of the things that we've been seeing in terms of more attention to businesses from people of color, I think that a lot of times people are confused about what all of this means. And just from what I've been seeing, I think that people just want equality. It's not a wholesale shift of, overturning, tables and whatnot. It's really just people need to have the same opportunities to have the same seat at the table. And I think that this is really, where businesses are pivoting. And this is probably like a larger business pivot, right? Is, where are businesses pivoting that are going to make a difference in diversity and inclusion? And there are so many different ways that we've talked about this in the past. But I think that, let's talk about it from small business, because that's what we were talking about earlier. From diversity and inclusion for small business, really, this is how are we telling our stories? How are we communicating about what it is that we do? And I think it's really key, for us to be able to communicate effectively about how our products come to be, how our businesses come to be, and how we are responding to the needs that are in our local community. Regarding larger businesses, it's like, how are we creating opportunities for these small businesses to sit alongside of brands that we've already kind of adopted as a part of our assortment, and finding and discovering new product that really makes a difference. I think that, one of the things that has been a real challenge is the connection for a lot of businesses of color and, minority-owned businesses, as well as women-owned businesses, is really just a lack of access to funding, a lack of access to connections that really help to propel their businesses forward. A lot of those networks are a bit more closed, and so people don't typically see those connections and feel the effects of it in their business as maybe others may. And so what we, as others, do. And so, in this space of diversity, inclusion, and access, as we're looking at how small businesses are engaging, I think it's really key for us to really think about, how are brands, minority-owned and women-owned businesses, able to connect into that. It's a much larger conversation, but I think that, kind of getting a chance to touch on that with Ann on Friday was really, really helpful. And so definitely, if you hadn't gotten a chance to listen to our talk on Friday, definitely go back to that. And then I think that really the last area that I really wanted to talk about was, there's really an area regarding pivoting where she really leaned into the dialogue that we're having throughout, and understanding the need for multiple touch points throughout our customer journey. I know this feels a bit like we're kind of going from topic to topic, but if you go back to listen to Ann's talk, you'll get a chance to hear a lot of these in much more detail, but I'm just picking out the ones that I thought were particularly interesting to me, and wanted to kind of recap and talk about here again. So, but feel free to go back to the ACCFI Presents on Friday, just this last week. It was July 24th. So you'll see it. It's Ann Kasper's talk. But, one of the things that I also really appreciated from the conversation that she and I had was really about, things that can kind of pivot you in your own moment. And I'm just going to list off a few of them that she shared that really stood out to me. So the first one was creating a dialogue with a customer and creating multiple touch points. Because we can't connect right now, finding ways to connect to your customer and dialogue with your customer and spend time with your customer, although it takes more time and money. These are things that, are really, creating opportunities for brands in the future. And so it's really an investment, towards where things are going. But she's right. I think a lot of us are craving that one-on-one attention. We're craving that connection, not just with, a purchase in our cart, but to be able to actually engage with another human being, whether it's, the person who's dropping off, you call not to anyone who's dropping off food, because they drop it and run, but online, finding ways to be able to connect in a way that really makes a difference. For, the other thing that she had mentioned was, just being able to communicate more clearly, and to pivot in the way that we're delivering product to the customer. And this is really where we have this opportunity for speaking more to sustainability and slower fashion, and being able to make product to order as opposed to trying to make product in mass. As we're sitting here in our homes, we're really, I believe people are really thinking about the world in which we live and the world that we're leaving to our families. And we're not okay with where things have been. We're not okay with, the massive amount of inventory and, liability that's sitting out there, that's, polluting our oceans and, changing the way that we're breathing our air. People are tired of it. And, it's being able to pivot and really not just, greenwash and speak to sustainability, but really mean it and to be transparent in that space. We understand that for a lot of larger companies, this is really a transitional time, but if or that it takes a bit more effort for them to move into this because it's just, steering a much larger ship. But for small brands, this is really a time to, say, hey, our product is fabulous, but you'll get it in 6 weeks, or however long it takes. Maybe you got it down much shorter. And I would advise getting it as short as you possibly can. However, this is really a time where we really need to shift into things that feel more authentic, more sustainable, and something that we're really going to love and invest in for a long time. I think that, another area where she was really talking about was, building the tribe and community for your brand, during this time. It's that, you've been talking, we've been saying things, we've been, using the language of our customer during this time. But, this is really where it's time for us to really invest in our tribe, and really invest in our community and keep the engagement going. We really want to see, our personal mission, specifically for Central Texas, to really see, small businesses thrive from this space. However, now that we're virtual, we're talking to people everywhere. We've talked with businesses as far as New Zealand. We talk with businesses in Canada, in Mexico. This is I've, advised, designers that are, based in Italy and, are coming to the US or have already been here. So we're really, being in this space, guys, keeps you global. It keeps you visible. And so being able to, continue to build the tribe and community of your brand, it may extend beyond the walls of where you were originally conceived. Our program was conceived within, community college, which is not typical for a fashion innovation technology program, with a Gerber Technology founding partner, where, we're leveraging some incredible cloud-based technology, as well as, amazing pattern design software and automatic cutting systems, and, being supported by the city of Austin. So, the three of these areas coming together is completely atypical, and it was really created to serve Central Texas. However, what we're seeing is that there's interest in a variety of different locations now that we're in this space where we're always virtual. And that's something that we're really excited to start to offer in a larger sense. We'll be doing some things that I'm really excited about on an international scale here shortly, but I'll keep you updated on what that is. I think there's going to be some very exciting things happening in that regard. But all that to say is that your tribe and your community are shifting. And so in our pivot, how we're communicating, how we're talking, all of this is key to be able to really think through, how you are now engaging your wider audience that maybe you didn't have before. And then, this time always flies by. I've only got 5 more minutes. But I think this is, really where we are. It's like, hey, keep talking, keep the conversation going. The customer really wants to continue to hear from you, but you have to be smart about where and how you talk to them. Keep it going, but don't do it, so obtrusively or so in your face that people are like, oh, not them again. you're learning a balance of, when they're on this particular platform, how long do they want to hear from me? What do they want to hear from me? What do they need? What kind of support are they looking for? I think that really kind of understanding, your customer in that way, reevaluating your analytics on your social media, reevaluating what you thought you knew about how people are engaging with your brand. So here, this is really where we want to see some, we believe you'll see some significant change as you pivot and shift in this space, speaking out on the things that are engaging your customer differently now, as the pandemic has kind of roared on, versus what was happening this time last year. They may have needed something different from you. I'm guessing truly, they needed something different from you this time last year than they do today. So this is an opportunity to really pivot and shift into things that really matter in a new way to your customer. So, the data is really where, even as creatives, especially as creatives, we have to really lean into. And I think that that's something that a lot of us may have missed. It's a lot of times it's just kind of throwing things up on the screen, throwing things up on our, our profiles, and just kind of getting things going and keeping things moving. But we've got to have a purpose in, the message. And that really goes back to the original talking about where we started. This kind of brings us back full circle, is like, it's really about staying on purpose, back to Ann's. I love this quote that she says. She says, "Nothing is sacred except for the brand." And, it's just, you got to stay on message. And so I love that she shares that so clearly with us. And, I really would recommend you going back to listen to her talk. She's got so much information. You really could just kind of keep going and going and going with her. But she's really a wealth of knowledge, and we're so lucky to have her as an advisory board member at ACC Fashion Incubator. So I'm actually going to go ahead and get ready to wrap up here. We've got a couple of minutes left. I don't think we have any questions from the chat today, but I just wanted to, kick off the week with you. We're so glad that you're here. It's a pleasure to get a chance to talk with you and share some of these thoughts that we've been having. It's ever evolving, it's ever changing. And, I think there's some nature of that we have to be ready for that ebb and flow. However, I believe that we also have opportunities to do some really great things kind of in the future, with these shifts that are being required of us. So, don't let the pivots get you down. Don't let, the challenges get you down. Take some time to reevaluate, get someone else to kind of look over your shoulder and kind of say, hey, here's what I see. Here's what I think could be of benefit for you. And make sure to talk with people who are a little different from you. We could all fill up a room of a bunch of people who look and talk just like us, but then no new ideas would come about. And so this is really where we find value in collaboration and inclusion and diversity, not in a variety of different ways, right? And how much stronger we are when we do that. So, take the time to really, think through, take that to-do list. I mentioned that earlier. Take that to-do list and look at what's thriving and what's not. And say, okay, clearly this is where I need help, and see what can be. This can be a really great time for you to reevaluate and to restructure your business, your operations, your product, but also yourself. And we see that entrepreneurs need this all the time. So, it's been a pleasure to be with you. Again, remember that, we are always here. We're available through all of our social media handles at ACC Fashion Incubator. If you subscribe to us here on YouTube, you'll get a chance to hear about all the things that we're doing when we post a new video, whenever we're going live. Typically, a lot of our content is live, but we'll start posting some of our videos that are already pre-recorded, so you can kind of go back to them whenever you'd like. So again, guys, my name is Nina Means. I'm the director for Austin Community College Fashion Incubator, and this has been Coffee Talk.